So, welcome and hello. This is the Wonder in the Weeds show, where every week we explore and share how we live, love, and grow right alongside grief and change and the wild messiness that is this human life. I'm Christy Ritz-King, and I'm really excited to share with you today. So, jumping right into this week's weeds, the title of the show, or the topic of the show, was supposed to be, how do you parent through either a crisis or through like some world disorder, which is where it feels like we are right now. I am currently in the wonderful great state of Minnesota, and we are the population of, and I'm right outside the Twin Cities, and the population of our city is, the Somali population of our city is under attack by the leader of this country. I'm not going to talk a lot about that today, but just like that's where we are in the world. And so how do you parent through that? You know, I'm parenting adult kids right now through that. So it's been some interesting conversations and some interesting points of view. And that is really the reason why my oldest daughter and I started the XYZ podcast / show. If you were listening last week, then you heard that the two of us were on together, myself from Gen X and my 23-year-old daughter from Gen Z. And she and I thought that we should start the show based on some of the conversations we were having around, you know, political issues and social justice issues and even pop culture and things like that were going on in the world. We have pretty great conversations in the car and at the kitchen table and things like that. And we thought, maybe these are conversations other people need to hear. Maybe the world needs to know that actually the generations don't hate each other as much as the internet would like you to think, and that parents agree with their kids and listen to their kids and learn from their kids more than the internet would like you to think. And kids respect their parents and listen to their parents and take into consideration their parents way more than the internet would like you to think. So she and I thought, we got to show the world that like people have good relationships with their parents and their children, and that also you can agree to disagree or just agree, you know, more than people think and all of that stuff. But as a result of that podcast, the first episode, she was talking about living through COVID. And for me, who was there with her, it gave me a different perspective on how we sort of got through that time together. And it helped sort of inform this episode of like, well, how do you parent when the world just feels unstable, when things feel like, you know, every day in this country, every minute of every day in this country, if you choose, you could be plugged into news that is like head spinning. It seems like there's no end to that, and there's no, you can opt out, but it's tricky to opt out of it without opting out of everything. Like, it's tricky to be informed and not overwhelmed. And so then add on to that, if you're trying to raise children in this, how hard that must be. And so rather than have advice, and I'll go into for a little bit why I don't have a lot of great advice. And that is largely because I don't think parenting advice is one size fits all or should be given out so freely. I sort of am of the mind that the whole idea of parenting expert is a bit of a misnomer, because I don't really think anybody's an expert in parenting your children except you. That said, I do have a pretty extensive amount of educational background in child development and mental health and parenting. And I have been a parent for 24 years and have gotten them all to 18. They're not done yet. They're not fully cooked, but I have successfully gotten them all at least out of the house and into college, or to start their adult life. So I do have some experience. I do have some knowledge. I do have some sort of basic tenets of parenting, and I have a pretty extensive background in crisis and trauma. So putting all that stuff together, I have some thoughts on how do you parent when the world is on fire, but I just want the caveat to be, I'm no one's an expert, and no one thing is the answer to everybody. And you have to know your kids and yourself in order to be able to parent in general, much less parent in a crisis. So no advice. But with sticking with the theme of wonder in the weeds, it's hard these days to find wonder in the weeds of the news and the state of our world and constant crisis it feels like we're in. And having kids during this time makes finding the wonder a little bit easier for two reasons, and I'm going to tell you. I mean, if they're little kids, they're just their sense of wonder, their curiosity, their joy should be infectious if you let it. Like, let that be a bath over you. If you're home with little kids and you're mostly exhausted and tired and overwhelmed, because sure, that's also a part of it, try to give yourself the gift of allowing their joy and their curiosity and their silliness and their sense of wonder. Try to let that wash over you a little bit. It's not a cure for the exhaustion and the overwhelm, but it can be a salve, a balm, if you will, over the rougher parts. So try to let that wash over you. I'm not one of those people that's like, enjoy every minute of it because it doesn't last, and don't, you're going to wish away these days and then you're going to wish you didn't. Like, no. It stinks. Having little kids is exhausting and relentless and mostly a drag. And there are some really good moments. And I hope for you that you can absorb those really good moments and you can hold on to them for when you really need them, because they don't erase all the other stuff, but they do help carry that load a little bit. So my wish for you, if you have littles at home, is that especially this season, when it's like holiday season and everybody's cranky and crazy anyway, I hope that some of the magic of the season wears off on you from them. You let their magic wear off on you. And in the world, in the greater world where we are now, it would be really easy to just get totally overwhelmed by the thought of your children having to grow up in this world. And so I hope for you that you can have some of their sense of curiosity and wonder and use that as hope inspiring for you. Like seeing this next generation of people, little people who are like, oh, well, they're going to take over someday, and look at the goodness of them. That's hopeful. It's hopeful to think they're going to be in charge someday, rather than, oh no, they're going to have to grow up in this. I'm not saying you're not going to have moments like that, but I am hoping for you that some of their like childlike magic can be a sense of hope for you, can give you a sense of hope. And then if you have older kids, or even if you don't have older kids, but if you know older kids, if you just look out into the world at the younger, teenagers and up, they are incredible. Whitney Houston was right when she said children are our future. And I know it's not, whatever, whoever wrote it. I have always, when I was a teacher, I preferred middle school. When I worked as a youth minister at a church, you didn't know that, did you? When I was a youth minister at a church, I loved working with high school kids. Like, I've never shied away from the age brackets that everybody else thinks are like obnoxious or hard or whatever. I'm not saying they aren't sometimes, but I really have always found middle school, teenager, young adult, early 20s, that like chunk of people, they're just incredible humans. And now this Gen Z generation, the like school, I call them the school shooting generation, because that's how they grew up. They grew up with like safety drills that meant that they, constantly had on their mind that someone was going to come into their building and shoot them. They are fire starters in all the best ways. They're so smart. They're so determined. They're so resilient, which, you hate for them on one hand, but also like it's hopeful. It's hope inducing. Their resilience is hope inducing. I wish they didn't have to be so freaking resilient, but they are and they have been, and that is really admirable. Finding that balance. So like parenting through a crisis, like how do you do it? How do you maintain your own sanity and theirs in this time where it feels like everything's shaky and uncontrollable and who knows what to expect next. Part one is you have to take care of yourself. And part of how I am doing that is looking to younger people for hope. I'm not looking to them for answers. I'm not expecting them to do anything for me. I'm just witnessing them and allowing that sort of energy to give me hope, I'm looking at it as the promise that it is, which is like, woof, if these are the people that are going to take over, we're in great hands. That's not really advice on how to parent, but it is advice on how I, right now at least, am getting through some of this. When you turn on the news or when you open your phone and you start to scroll and everything just feels hopeless and dark and scary and it like nobody can get along, my first piece of advice is put the phone down, because that's not the real world. Like, yes, it is a way to gather information. And unfortunately for most of us, it's a lot of things, like that's a lot of the news that we're taking in now is from those apps. But if you can put that phone down and get out into the world with real people, especially young people, even if it's just the kids in your own home, that can help with the balance of reality and the darkness of the current reality and the hope for a brighter future. Recognizing like these little marvelous creatures from, kindergarten to freshman year of college, just full of a kind of strength and a kind of determination that I'm not sure previous generations were full of. And again, I have this XYZ podcast where I'm like trying to defend my Gen Xers. And I think that there's a lot of things to defend about us, but I do think Gen Z and beyond, I don't even know what the next group's called yet. I do think they are uniquely prepared for what's ahead of us. And so some of parenting through this is like focusing on that part. Even with the kids, focusing on that part, not putting the responsibility on them, but helping them to see their talents and their bright spots and their unique set of strengths and skills that we're all gonna benefit from at some point, and nurturing that and giving them the space to grow into that. And, if they're yours at home, allowing them to discover who they are, learning from them, they're just better at so many of these things than we are just because we never did them. I think of my middle one when she came out as trans and how, I was tied up in knots about how people were going to accept her, and what she had this incredible group of guy friends that didn't even bat an eye. They didn't even bat an eye. And we're like, okay, great. Thanks for telling us. I think of my oldest who, has multiple friends that are somewhere in the spectrum of LGBTQ. No, whatever. And it just doesn't matter. Like it doesn't matter. They're just better at it. We as grown-ups, as the grown-ups, we're so much more wound around, like, what do we say and how do we call it and what does it mean and how come we don't understand it and blah 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 blah. And this group, this generation, they're just much better at being like, I don't know, they're my friends, like who cares. And so that aspect of them, that idea that they're just like, they're resilient and they're accepting and they're so stinking smart and they're so determined and they have such clear ideals and they're not afraid to stand up for them and fight for them, that gives me such hope, and that helps me parent through these times. Looking for that wonder, looking for the qualities in them that I can stand in awe of. That is what helps me to parent through these times. And it's what helped me during COVID. My daughter talked about COVID and she talked about it as if she talked about it from her perspective and what the experience was like for her. And I was listening to her thinking, man, I thought you got through that so well, because what I was witnessing was that resilience and that hopefulness and that determination and all of those things that I still see in her. She was feeling, isolated and alone and hopeless and all of those things, but I was not seeing that side of her. I was seeing the side of her that was just plugging away and continuing to do what she needed to do and move on with her life and help other people and take into consideration other people and be sort of aware of things. And I saw her grow through that in a way that it surprised me when she talked about how, not that it surprised me that it was bad for her. That was obvious. But I guess just that she didn't necessarily see her own strength and resilience and hopefulness the way that I did through it. So I think reminding them of it, if they're yours, if they're in your home and you are trying to figure out, how do I raise these people in a world where it feels like it's on fire? I think one of the things is recognizing how amazing they are. And knowing that that's part of your job is nurturing that. The important thing you can do to make the world better is to raise better kids. And so recognizing that you're doing it and that they are amazing, and then helping them to recognize that too, and giving them the space to grow into that incredible human being. And learning from them, quite frankly. Sit back and see what they have to teach you, because it's probably more than you expect. So there you go. I don't have a ton of advice on parenting in a crisis. I don't think that anybody should. But I will tell you that lately the weeds have been, oh my gosh, how do you find any wonder, and how do you help kids find wonder when the world feels like it's on fire? And it turns out the wonder is the kids themselves. Pay attention to them. Bask in the goodness of them, and then remind them of the goodness and how they can use that to make the world better than it currently is. That's all I got today. I hope you guys are out there finding wonder in your own weeds. Till next time.